Dave, I think a lot of people probably think that suspension is just about setting up suspension is just about setting up how a bike feels. Would you agree with that, or is there something deeper to it?
Um, there's two pieces to that. One is your actual anatomy. If you bought an expensive bike or bicycle, you are going to pedal for 45 minutes until they put all the right parts on it so that it's perfect for you.
Mm-hmm.
So part one is ergonomics. Does it fit you? The biggest mistake people make is not measuring from belly button to the steering thing. How big is that reach? How long
Yeah,
are your arms? That's the biggest mistake. And then 9 times out of 10 with a road motorcycle, the
yeah,
brake lever is too high. So the first thing you do is put the throttle on because you've got to pull your hand back to get your fingers up to clear the brake lever to then go use it. So at 80 miles an hour, that's 200 feet. And that's why most people get into a situation where they panic because they can't respond to a crisis. They react to it because the time delay is too long. So
mm-hmm.
part one is ergonomics. Part two is suspension. Even if it's not adjustable, there are ways to fix that. And
Okay.
simple ways that are super cheap. So with your Ninja 300, it would have been fork oil. You go for something thicker, it works better, it's way more stable, and it gets to be replaced every 3,000 miles, and it's $20. The
Wow.
front
Okay.
of the so there's options. Just because it's not adjustable, you could change springs. You can
Mm,
do all kinds of very cheap, incredibly effective things that
yeah.
make you relax, enjoy the bike more. And if you get in a crisis situation, it responds 300% better.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I just want to summarize what you just said because if someone's on their first bike, or their second bike, and they're starting to think, man, this is good. I want to change my suspension, but I don't have an adjustable suspension. I'm going to go buy this super expensive suspension, which I usually tell people don't do that because this isn't your last bike. So why would you go spend $2,000 or $1,000 on a suspension before you even get it installed and adjust it? When you're not even going to keep the bike. So bringing up the
Right.
point that someone that doesn't have adjustable suspension, they can just use fork oil and or springs to get that a more appropriate response. I think that's like a what do they call that? That's a 700 IQ move right there. For newer riders, right? For beginner riders, like for sure, that's super cool. Save that money up and put that towards the next bike with adjustable suspension, and then hit up Dave so he can adjust it for you. Yeah,
Right.
that's how you do that. Um, so yeah,
I'm
that
I'm
answers.
really cheap on that stuff because I will not people let people spend money that is unwarranted.
Yeah,
Even a good rider, and I'll tell them flat out, you're not ready for that yet. You are not going to get the best out of it. Now, if you have way too much money, then you're going to do things that don't make sense because you want to and you can. So I can't fight that.
yeah,
But if the education process comes as it is for you, it's gaining knowledge, it's getting more momentum, you're getting a better understanding.
yes,
If a
yes.
new rider could start there in terms of perspective, they'd
Mhm.
get a lot more out of the motorcycle with planned investment that is cheap, like fork oil viscosity or different spring.
Yeah, I do have one follow-on question about this because I saw in one of your videos there was a gentleman that was you were tuning his bike, and I was about to do the same thing. So I'm very curious about this because I think other people might be thinking the same thing. But this guy was talking about getting like an Olean's racing suspension. And your response to him was for the street, right? So what are your thoughts about someone getting like some super high performance, racing suspension, and they may barely track the bike or never take the track bike? What are your thoughts about that?
You are going to personalize your motorcycle to a level that you see fit. That could be different air filter, different ECU remap, performance exhaust, loud slip on, different colored vinyl wraps. There are so many different ways to make your motorcycle when you look at it perfect.
Yeah.
That one of those inclusions is spending $1,000 to $5,000 on suspension. But when you do that, if you do not have the ability and the engineering they supply you with doesn't work, because you are required with race suspension to go at a set pace.
Mm,
One, you're going to jail because you've got to do speeds that will mean your license is gone for a year to
yeah.
actually make it work. So there's the first perspective. And the
Wow.
second perspective is, unless you put it under that level of duress, it's going to bounce you out of the seat all the time. Now, that being said, if you have that money, they can go make it work for the street, but you have to pay again for the engineering inside the forks and the shock and the springs to be set correctly for the use you have. So you're going to actually double pay.
That's not good. Wow.
So from an investment point of view, you want you want that on your bike, then spend the extra money and actually have it engineered for what you're going to use it for.
Mm,
Because if the bike won't handle, why are you spending money on other stuff to make it faster, louder, brighter? It doesn't make any sense. One of the things that I do at riders meetings, whether it's at the track or an event, is look at people and say, that carbon fiber piece you spent $2,000 on,
yeah.
how did it improve the handling of the bike? It
Mm,
didn't. It made it lighter, which actually made it worse. So
yeah.
would you fix it first to make it right? And if you make it right, then the carbon fiber addition with a lighter motorcycle makes it easier to flick side by side, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
But don't go backwards and throw money at it to make a motorcycle handle worse.
Yeah. Um, I thought about that. I'm a pretty heavy guy, and I was like, instead of spending money to just make my motorcycle lighter, I should just go to the gym and make myself lighter. But
There's a truth to that. And I mean, when I was racing,
yeah,
I had to beat a young man that was 100 pounds lighter than me.
yeah.
So I lost 40 pounds to bring the power to weight ratio back and beat him.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
So the only way to be a better rider is look at the situation and what can you do to improve yourself. Sometimes that's weight, sometimes that's practice, and sometimes that's training.
Right.
So which of those three or combination of those three is in your best interest?
That's a good
And
point.
helping yourself is free.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say are some of the most common problems that you see with riders of all levels, in their suspension? What's some of the most common things you see?
Nobody knows where their front forks bottom out.
Mm,
They do not put a mark on the fork, even if that is a black felt pen or a piece of tape for where bottom is. So when they put a cable tie on it to see how much travel they're using, they have no context. It's
yeah.
just a cable tie on a piece of chrome or gold. So until you put that bottom mark out, you have no idea, even if you're riding just for fun, how close to crashing you are. No matter, I find newer riders don't have an understanding of where bottom out is. And so they crash. They have
Mm.
no idea what happened. But when you look at what's clean on the fork and what's dirty, it is obvious that they crashed because they used all the travel repeatedly.
When I was in my motorcycle safety course, my instructor said there was a guy that was riding for 30 years. He was riding along like where the cars are parked on the road, and a car pulled out and he ran into it. And my instructor said the guy's been riding for 30 years, he's experienced. He said, but there's a difference between being experienced and being trained. Now,
Yes.
I wonder how many people have been riding for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and have probably crashed for that very reason, but have attributed it to something else like I didn't trail brake right, or I took the corner too fast, or it must have been gravel. When in reality, it was this suspension error that they have no idea that exists.
Right.
That's crazy. That's really
So
crazy.
the same is true of the rear shock because that has a very thin silver shaft that you can see.
Yeah.
At the bottom of that shaft is a rubber bumper on every shock on the planet. So if that silver shock shaft is completely clean all the way to the bottom, you're bottoming the shock out. And if you can look up and inside, you'll see a circular imprint on the shock body itself that is exactly the same size as the rubber bumper.
Mm,
So what I tell people to do, because nobody gets into a rear shock with a Q-tip and clean it, if there's about an eighth of an inch or 3 or 4 millimeters above that rubber bumper that's dirty, you're
yeah.
safe.
Okay.
So use your eyes critically, but have a data point so that what you see means something. It has
Absolutely.
context.
Absolutely.